It used to be that those who were outcasts, chosen or otherwise, were reviled, spit on, and shunned in everyday society. Currently, a paradigm shift is happening, so that those labeled different are stepping into the spotlight or having it cast upon them. I believe this is happening because there are those who want to integrate these individuals into the legion of the apathetic horde. In other words, those who have felt useless and unwanted before now will finally claim a spot in the herd where they can feel warm and special. On the one side in this scenario, we have simple, groupthink-minded, meme-generating dunces willing to do anything to keep from being separated from the pack, even if it means berating, hating, and antagonizing those who are by pushing those who have been divided from the herd into a corner until they feel they are left with no choices or with no means to survive. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the shining snowflakes, the so-called special ones, the others who make it a point to be different, who are completely, unflinchingly okay with the aforementioned lot that have been cut out of mainstream society, as long as they do not think for themselves or act how they please at any given moment. In other words, it's cool if you are different, just as long as you bow to the laws the others have made concerning being different. But what about those of us who want neither side? Those of us who just want to live out our lives to the best of our potential and have some fun in the meantime. When one doesn't want the rules of the apathetic horde or the pretentiousness of the others, what is one left with? The answer is nothing. We are left with nothing. As far as the rest of the world is concerned, anyway. Inwardly, we have reduced ourselves to the 0 point and given rise to the nascent point, known to some as the unknown variable. By now, any rational person would be asking themselves, how is this nothing supposed to be a choice? Let alone unseen, let alone a variable. Does that mean I shall remain unknown and unseen in life? Confusing to be sure. And that's where the difficulties with this path arise. To start with, the general population of humanity isn't even aware of their ability to choose. Following that, in the event they can make choices, they believe they can only select from the ones handed out by others to them, or even worse, a self-proclaimed ruling class. But hardly, if any of these, know how to annihilate the weak, rusted machinery of the rotting choice corpses on either side, by crushing them to dust in the very core of their being. Then from the ashes starting fresh in order to realize that, by reducing to nothing, over time and with much effort, you can become anything. So let's say you are one who has found yourself detached from the apathetic horde and shunned by the so-called others. Now left on your own with the aforementioned so-called nothing. Do you accept the unknown variable? Do you relegate yourself to this nothing in order to become whatever you choose? Once you have committed to the task, whatever your choice may be, you would do wise to listen further. If you are unable to make the choice, anything I say in part 2 won't make a bit of sense. In De-Isolationism Part 1, I mentioned the multifarious choices we are given in life, and also mentioned the fact of one's ability to differentiate between these choices. Then proceeding after making the proper choice for them personally, which for some may include the unknown variable, we begin here under the notion that one has integrated the unknown variable within themselves, becoming nothing, a blank slate, so to speak. By affirming oneself as a blank slate, that doesn't mean you abandoned everything of who you once were. Surely there are events that have been woven into your lives deemed useful to survival and even worthwhile. At this point, one could make mention of the fact that those individuals who have been left with no choices, so to speak, are actually forced to choose this nothing and begrudgingly accept their lot in life. To this statement, a confident individual would reply, the fact remains a decision must be made to follow the path you have actively chosen, which means you are in charge of your life, forced into a corner or not, or continue to blame others, relinquishing the control of your existence to them. As with anything, the rational answer is always the proper answer. When following the rational answer, the now empowered individuals begin rebuilding from the nascent point, a mental guidebook for themselves. This guide will help them traverse the endless pitfalls of life with confidence and purposeful direction. We know that having grown to a certain stage of development, outwardly there are many influences helping to mold us, especially if we are fortunate enough to have a loving family, and a sound living environment. I want to sidestep a bit here and refer to the individuals who don't have the aforementioned qualities of life. Those who, by some twist of fate or by their own doing, have been left out in the cold in regards to a proper upbringing or any kind of solidarity in their existence. In these cases, it has probably been said by themselves and others, I don't stand a chance in this world because no one has ever been there to guide me or show me the proper path. Whether we know it or not, we have all crossed paths, or actually are an individual who has been born from this nothing and arisen to great heights. The simple fact is, optimizing oneself is possible no matter the background of the person. In the end, unrelenting effort is key in pursuit of perfection. If an individual combines effort with proper attitude, nothing lies beyond their scope. In the tragic cases of those who feel they cannot connect with the world, spiraling out of control in a chaotic implosion of self, we can only say, there's no doubt at some time the opportunity to progress had appeared in some form or another. Unlike those who choose to progress, they chose not to take the proper path. The implosion of self leads to an explosion of the shadow, releasing the festering hate and anger back out into the world. To these forgotten ones, we can only hope they choose the proper path in their next life. Moving forward, in creating your guidebook, you can start by using memory techniques, which are the recommended course, as opposed to writing methods of improvement in a notebook or storing them in a note-taking application. Developing a strong memory is key to many things in life. And let's be honest, although helpful, do you really want all your devices doing the thinking for you? Whichever way one chooses, we can begin by finding the courage to seek out pathways in life others are too feeble or afraid to find. Generally speaking, this is the hardest step to take. The apathetic horde will endlessly condemn those who choose against the norm. As with any endeavor, do not allow yourself to be discouraged by their taunts. Keep your head high and eyes forward no matter the punishment society sees fit to cast upon you. In seeking new pathways, an unrelenting quest for the truth should be prominent in your thoughts. There's nothing wrong with asking for evidence and proof of an individual or group set of claims. Also, in all of these tasks, you should seek responsibility. Take account of the actions you perform and own the consequences. Responsibility is a scarce commodity in these times. Enrich yourself within its source. Anyone can choose, take action, seek truth and responsibility, but so many, even the strongest of the strong, lack the ability to finish what they set out to do. No matter the obstacle, once you commit to a task, you should always see to its completion. One should always test themselves, their knowledge, and their abilities. If these fail in the face of adversity, don't be afraid to erase the useless bits and start fresh. In the event you find yourself drifting into apathy or laziness, practice attentiveness. Too many people in this world lack the basic ability to pay attention to what happens around them. This is a trait that should be cultivated at all times. If you find yourself slipping into extreme cases of boredom, it would be a wise decision to get into a hobby. I know this tactic seems childish, but let us consider how many people could have avoided disaster, prison, hatred, laziness, and ignorance if they had found a productive way to spend their time. Instead of worrying about what everyone else is doing or doing nothing with their own lives. When people get bored, the mind consumes itself. Let's face the truth. This world would change drastically if everyone pointing their finger at others turned it toward themselves, and everyone pointing their finger at themselves would point it outward toward the world. This is just the beginning of this new pathway in your life. In travails, we must own the ability to make choices and back them with our very lives. So with this path, as with anything in life, add or take away anything that has its proper place in your personal guidebook. Reflect deeply on the contents of yourself, then check back here soon and we will discuss further progression. At an early period in our lives, usually the teenage years, we begin to draw inside the wonderment in observing the outer world. We turn this outer reflection inward to discover who we really are. The comparison could here be made of placing a letter inside an envelope that we wish to mail to ourselves to be received and read at some future date. The problem inherent with individuals in modern society is that when the time comes we receive the letter, we leave it unopened, usually thrown in some heap, never to be read or understood by anyone, including ourselves. Our fascination and excitement once contained and felt in youth is now hidden away, but it is not lost. We arrive at the point where we don't care to know anything about the world or ourselves. However, we still attempt to read and understand the contents of the letter, but now we do so by leering and peeking in through the outside of the sealed envelope, never able to comprehend the full extent of the inner thing. Set forth here before your mind's eye, obviously a crude example of what takes place at the time in human life when the ego is born. Over time, this ego becomes our wave filter, our subjective goggles, our human blind spot. While it is true our egos help us navigate the harsh objective world, sometimes for the better, most times for the worse, depending on the fashioning of its ability. At this period of development in the world, even those embedded in weakened states of being are arriving at understanding the effects societal and familial programming have on the individual. Here upon this word individual we step into manifold interpretations. And your thought simulations unveil the full meaning of this word down to its very core. What makes an individual? Empowerment of self? Everyday society teaches empowerment of the individual over others, which in turn feeds this ego. So here it is, we differentiate ego from individual or self. This severed path of the soul has created immense communication problems between self and others, most notably self and the world writ large. Where before we observed in wonderment the outside world, we remained disillusioned by any mention of the true self buried underneath the wreckage. The point can be posited: at what time does the individual take responsibility for their actions instead of jolting the accusatory finger at big bad society? And ascending this mountain of life, if an individual ego continues making weak choices attached to lazy indolence, they will not be allotted more energy, instead remaining stagnant. While those who choose solid pathways, constantly reinventing their ways of interacting with the world, will be doled out ever increasing amounts. Understanding this is important, especially for future endeavors. The declaration of the will to action. An individual can follow their will wherever they so choose, without thought of reward or consequence, so long as they do not intrude upon the will of others.
Balance is just a word to some. Having been reduced to a cheap simulacrum, so far removed from the original conception, all meaning or reason is erased from the phenomenal perception or word. Reaching further within, we can find the will to action still holds weight despite the problems leveled against it. The TikTok world of everyday life is a teeming mass of distractions, a realm of chaotic streams designed to keep individuals utterly off-center. A moment to stop and realize, the ones who are shining examples of ineptitude want nothing more than to throw around the words balance or harmony, which to them are mere words. This action, synonymous to picking up an instrument for the first time, then expecting anything but discord to fill the air, when their hands fumble around in a seizure-like fashion, attempting to create music. One of the major diseases of this world is that it's filled with talking heads who only want to portray a caricature of rationalism, balance, and harmony, instead of taking action to reshape the broken infrastructure. Intuitive rationalism isn't about words. We take action, we discard what is proven useless, and integrate what has purpose. These actions, on a subtle and grand level, must work differently on individuals according to their personal progression. Forging a better world means injecting meaning back into actions, not building up hollow words. To be balanced in some cases means to be completely unbalanced at some point or another. Individuals who have been pushed and prodded in a particular direction by antagonistic forces, can easily recognize the proper correcting course that should be pursued. The Clockwork Society wishes us to deny our passions, wants us to disregard our emotions and replace them with antiquated value systems, along with meaningless junk. They back us into a corner with so-called debt, yet still keep us comfortable and warm with phony ideals. Constant direct bombarding our minds to maintain the illusion that we have been given a choice. Surely free will exists, but the options are limited by the lack of imagination on the part of those who put the current paradigm into place. Balance must regain meaning in the will to action. Balance is not only understanding who you are, it is also embracing what you are not. Only when we traverse both paths can we develop onward. Harmony is finding homeostasis with the objective world, as well as getting in tune with one's own inner workings. The time for tiptoeing on the razor's edge of life is past. We must invest ourselves in everything we do, even the most menial of tasks. Balance must be created, not simply mentioned dispassionately in conversation, to wow people who are completely out of tune with existence. The synthesis of opposing forces can be achieved only if we come to realize there are no more sides in this existence. The one combined with the many gives rise to the whole. If we cannot turn these forces within ourselves, without prejudice against that which we abhor, then we comprehend nothing about the total nature of our existence. The war on abstraction is never ending. We must integrate meaning, purpose, and above all, life in everything that we do. Then and only then do we move beyond mere words. Herein lies the hidden path. The path strictly for those who are dedicated enough to look under the surface of things. When we peel back the facade of this world, what are we left with? Emptiness. We only feel this gloom here on the night side of things, because there are so few who wish to tread this path. It only seems we have no companions on this road. You are not alone. These words cannot be stressed enough. You can be free. A world built to strip everything away. This place that so many fear remains the one thing they will never seek. Solitude, the iron grip of the hollow shell. Our evolutionary womb wishes us to despair in the thralls of pain, inflicted by an unforgiving realm. The whispers of our would-be masters echo silently in our realm of forms, unable to penetrate our souls with their desire. They wish to replace our will with their own. The surface of the sun burns hot enough to dispel their taunts. Let them try. Try to succeed in reaching the center of our being. The inner fire, which warms us in the darkness of their dream, will consume them. So they, too, may be reborn from the ashes as something beautiful, terrible, and afraid.
Today it seems the more we plug ourselves into the electronic interface, the desire to swim in abstraction arises. The trouble with this information exchange did not begin with the internet, did it? How about television, books, hieroglyphics, or even the spoken word? We could just simplify this dialogue and say that the difficulties in communicating one perspective to another stem from the very act of communication itself. How many of us remember the whisper game? Do you remember how at the beginning point of a line, it started a secret or rumor that is passed on from person to person until the end of the line? How often was it that the initial telling was the same as the final secret? Imagine now that throughout history, or the beginning of communication from one point to another, the same effect has taken place. Layer upon layer as a false theme has been built around that which is objective truth. Modern day society confronts us with the sturdiness of an iron wall of indeterminate height and unfathomed width. The flaw inherent in the construction of this reality block is also the very thing that represents its destruction. In essence, it has no depth, no substance, no foundation to reinforce the structure over time. Not to mention, any individual with even a hint of rationality can see through bullshit from a million miles off. We have officially cut to the chase. That's the true effect now, isn't it? The conflict being waged has always been aimed outward from the center. Anyone recognizing the symbol of chaos can easily connect the dots to realize all the disparate points fighting amongst themselves can redirect their efforts backwards toward the origin. It has evolved throughout time and still takes many different forms to this very day. The oldest snake in the grass, the most ancient propaganda machine. Today we call it the media. We don't have another conspiracy theorist in our midst, I can assure you. I did not name this page Intuitive Rationalism because I worship tinfoil hat wearing mama's boys. We can easily peel back the skin of society and see what an impediment the misuse of freedom of speech has created. We can peel back another layer and see that facts can be maneuvered before they can even become news. Keeping on the topic at hand, however, once the facts have become news, they have already been filtered through a reducing valve. One perspective plus no other perspectives equals media interpretation. That's exactly what it becomes, doesn't it? Let us say it again. Media interpretation. Facts filtered through a reducing valve. Over time, these become what is known to us as history. By no means am I positing that we abolish the media. No. The spreading of important, useful facts is imperative to a self-correcting course for us as a people. But the problem thus arises, how do we redirect our course without annihilating free speech? One possible solution? We start by holding ourselves accountable for what transpires in the wake of what we should now deem misleading speech. Over time, the more we buy in to what we are being sold by this misleading speech, the more we are responsible for future generations shirking the purposes of their lives away to limited tales of reality. Reality is by no means one-sided, nor should it be reduced to a fable only convenient to those reciting it. We disconnect every time we review only one perspective. The time has come to broaden our horizons. We must reconnect with the truth.
The most efficient way to defeat an enemy is to divide them. Make no mistake, we cannot be more divided in this day and age. But who has deemed us the enemy? More importantly, why have they done so?
A simple observation of modern society shows division on every front. Every time a group of people with similar goals and interests comes together, it becomes all too easy to slap a label on themselves and begin fighting for their own cause. The enantiodromia born from this attitude develops even the most noble of causes into yet one more shape that refuses to fit into the overall puzzle work of humanity. When the pieces won't fit together, the overall picture is distorted and misshapen. How can we plot a correcting course for our monumental failures as a species? We start by building a cult of humanity.
Besides being a human, this cult has very simple rules.
Number 1, if you live here on Earth, you are one of us. Number 2, do as you please as long as you don't damage yours or anyone else's development. Number 3, contribute to the overall goal of the evolution of humanity to higher levels. Number 4, invest yourself in everything you do, even the most menial of tasks. Number 5, understand that not everyone evolves at the same level and treat each level accordingly. Love it or hate it, we are all floating on this slave ship, this battle cruiser, this blue crystal sphere, together.
Division equals destruction. Connection equals creation. One need not be a supreme rationalist to grok. The path we are walking right now as a species will lead to our demise. All we need do is redirect our course. We are not beyond reconnection.
Number 6, build up what is useful. Number 7, trod down that which is useless. It will always remain truth that we need forms of purposeful destruction to rebuild something new from the ashes of the old. The problem gripping the cult of humanity is that for far too long, We have never demanufactured the useless systems. We cling to the corpses of those dead ways as if our lives were dependent on them.
These anchors, these albatross will drag us to annihilation. Only if we refuse to release our grip on them. They are that which divides us. Imagine, if you can, humanity released from the dead weight of all useless ancient traditions, ab initio mundi. The quickening we would experience as a species would transform our world. Understand that even something useful at one point or from one perspective may not be beneficial at another time and place. We need to become malleable in our conceptions. We need to be open to new perceptions. Reconnection isn't about avoiding conflict. Reconnection isn't about waging wars at all times on every front. Reconnection is choosing our battles wisely, not being ready to face off every time someone disagrees with our point of view. Instead, we must develop perspectives that can stand the test of time. We must discover objective truths that we can all live by, in quality and quantity. It can be assured that the fight for existence is never ending. We must reconnect so we can start fighting together against the real enemy. Division amongst ourselves.
The morning light rises from beyond the shadows. I rise to find my place between them. This world is not my only home. There is no escape for those who choose to endure. One life is all we have. Time to find the best and the worst. I need space, so keep your distance. I have to wind up my day to feel whole again. Machine-made man going through predictable motions. Every movement the same as before. Going nowhere. It's time for something more.
Face the outside world as the pressures rise. Boiling, burning inside. Hollow faces seek acknowledgement. I have nothing to offer as a sacrifice. Only my patience wearing thin.
Blood pouring out. Luckily, this time, it's only mine. Flowing through, reincarnating me. Societal Frankenstein. Out to destroy my so-called creator. You kept me in this cage, holding me down. You wish me to suffocate. Implosion. Revulsion. Contortion. Abhorrent. Storm. In slow motion. Release the reins. Forgotten again. Carve the poison out. Isolation. Overload. Excess. Information. I must maintain focus in this manic illusion. Regain control. I comprehend my purpose. My becoming. Tear from inside, reaching out. No one to take my hand. But I am not alone. Apathy envelops the masses. Why do they not care? I have survived another day where so many have given in. Together, we have pushed forward while they lay down to die. Abandon fear, all those who enter. Do not be discouraged as the world keeps turning. Fix your eyes to the sky. Anchor your feet to the ground. They want you to fail. Show them you are unable. This world is ours. It is time to reclaim it.
It occurred to me, some individuals might be wondering, what is the purpose of intuitive rationalism? After various considerations of a proper answer, I feel confident I have arrived at a sufficient reason for the existence of such a thing. By this nexus in our history, we can find available in just about every corner content informing us about the morbid condition we find ourselves embedded within.
You are being lied to. The truth is out there. Religion is oppressive. Life is a dream. It's all just a game. You are a slave. We have all the answers. The government hates you. They're wrong. No, you're wrong and we're right.
The list is endless. For simplicity's sake, we'll cut the list short before it overtakes us. Most things contained on the truth list are in fact true. Most, though, are propaganda. I leave the ability to differentiate between truth and fiction to you, kind listener. It's not my place, nor my duty, to make decisions regarding either for you. At the very least, I can inform you that there are more options than you previously thought concerning your life and the meaning contained therein. The purpose of intuitive rationalism is simple, especially if you view it from the perspective of reviewing hitherto unknown options concerning an individual's chosen paths of life. When an individual chooses to set forth on an endeavor, what is the inciting moment? The majority of the times, an idea is the forerunner, inspired or otherwise. Other times, an inspiration from the unconscious will become the pillar of action. However, the method is brought forth, the will to action is imperative in the execution of a task. The will to action is the bridge between mind and matter. The old saying goes, mind over matter. The new way, which is more than just a saying, is between mind and matter is the potential for actualization. We call this the intuitive method. So now it is known the intuitive method is the will to action between mind and matter, the bridge between knowledge and experience. The task of intuitive rationalism is transforming this dull, shadowy concept of intuition into a rational understanding of what takes place within the realms of the unconscious and conscious minds. Our reality is a constant feedback loop between inner and outer, above and below, good and evil, right and wrong, so on ad infinitum. It is the goal of intuitive rationalism to first thread these opposites together, then rise above them. So it is in modern society. When an individual begins a quest for whatever purpose, they usually never move past the inception stage. We could call these dreamers or talkers. For whatever reason, usually weak will, they find themselves unable to complete what they set out to do. The purpose of intuitive rationalism is to show individuals how to bring what lay dormant in the unconscious, that chaotic potentiality, and summon it forth willfully into the conscious world order, otherwise known as objective reality. This can be extremely difficult, especially at first, since most of humanity that creates objective reality remains in a dreamy, unconscious walking sleep, which is just a long way of saying they keep the unconscious locked away. The time of change has arrived, where the need to raise the misunderstood realms of the night mind to the clear daylight of consciousness is a necessary journey. We will move from a world where individuals want everything via instant gratification to a world where the small-mindedness contained in that thought simulation is obsolete. Instant gratification involves attempting to move from point A to point C without the treading through of point B. In other words, they want to talk, not walk. In between the alternating states mentioned before is the hidden path. Available to all, intuitive rationalism is the foundation of that path. The bridge between opposites has arrived. Are you willing to traverse the will to action?
It's easy for so-called intellectuals to sit on a fucking pedestal, mocking those who exist in the trenches of reality. In the dialectic of knowledge versus experience, the work of reconciling what one knows against ability to do is fierce. The gap created by this spectrum is beyond measure. Leave it to crowdsourcing sycophants to regurgitate the same tired bullshit time and time again. That's always been the way, hasn't it? Claim to be an individual, unique, creative, yet forever remain one of the brainless. The unending cycle of worthless creeps claiming meritorious is a prison built by the inhabitants. How many times must we be subjected to foul mediocrity or utter feebleness and still have to smile in the face of treachery? The necessity of becoming commands our utmost attention, yet here we are, distracted, dismayed, undeveloped. You can wait for someone to tell you what to do. That's right, don't take a step without an unqualified moron directing you how far to go. The time has come to make empowered choices. Otherwise, get left in the dust with those who deny free will.
True. There comes a time in our lives when we deny our existence. It's a natural state of affairs. It is important to learn the ability to redirect our once fragile thoughts toward the highest attainment we can achieve in any given situation. They don't want competition, they want submission. And that's fine if you have chosen the path of the sleepwalker. In doing so, you should also choose to move aside, so those who want to evolve can do so without you blocking the fucking road. On all sides, fear campaigns are inflicted on the human race in order to harvest the energy that such emotions emit. It has become far too easy for individual minds to be swayed by the media. Polarization is a plague on a healthy society, and the death knell of the diseased. Take stock of where we stand in this maelstrom of false words. We've been encouraged to devalue intangible things.
Imagination, emotion, instinct. What follows other than these possessions of true value are torn away unnoticed? The only worth money accumulates is that which has been placed on it. Abolish the economic principle and watch the house of cards collapse. Destroy greed at the source.
Who am I? How to find a home within the singularity, when I am born from the same, yet shunned by all pertain. A holographic rejection who refuses to agree with the lies. I traverse a singularity of my own creation, becoming more than fate's will. It is necessary to minimize the damage inflicted by constant bombardment of misinformation. The rationalist must see through the intentions of would-be manipulators. We cannot allow ourselves to be taken in by false icons. We must consistently rebuild what the apathetic masses attempt to break away. We must consistently rebuild what the apathetic masses attempt to break away. Remember, you are not alone. Never forget, there is always another path. Choose to rise above the everyday conflict. Search for your true purpose. Detach from the spoon-fed ideals inflicted on you by a weaker class of human beings. The totality of this reality is all that we have. Life, the one gift we have been given. Do not let it fade away. When upon endless aeons we finally overcome the dead ways, we will be reborn from the fiery corpse of this universe. For now unto the eschaton we bring everything we have to the dialectic. The forgotten remembered, the lost brought back from the brink, the traveler returned home, everything in its proper place. We forge ahead, always and forever. There is a place where I can go to dream. The time will come when I return to suffering, forever dwell in singularity. Reflect the world as a mirror. What do you see? Observe yourself as a mirror. How does the world reflect you? When we look out into the world, there is no doubt we can, through the physical senses, interact with the myriad influences of matter. We all perform this act, some more consciously than others, to a greater or lesser degree, which allows us to function in day-to-day life. This is a necessary part of evolution, being able to interact with things outside of ourselves. The ability to do so with a higher functioning reason is just a bonus. When we turn our observation inward, it can be realized we also interact with a new world. However, the function of this world is different from the everyday interpretation of its physical inverse. When we take one foot out of the physical inverse, then proceed to place it on the nominal path, we must also realize there should be a way to interact with this realm. There needs to be a self, an observer, a traveler, who could make way into the unknown. By now we realize there is a traveler of this path. We can call this the nominal self. The nominal self is not merely a guide through these worlds, it is our vessel. And as we will come to witness so much more than definitions or labels can adhere to, the transformation goes unnoticed, turning from the objective to the subjective. Objective becomes inner, subjective becomes outer. To rise above the superstition of matter, to become more than a dream, to become more than yourself. Rise above the decaying flesh. Go beyond the framework of thought. The moment you are defined, you turn to stone. Our path is the path without end. Life, death, where lays the road between? We run forever, not away, not toward. We are the path and the traveler. We are that which weaves them together. Unify the disparate images, the riddle of the soul, the mystery of becoming. If a side is chosen, the answers fade away. When we turn existence within ourself, everything becomes one. To deny the world is to deny the self. Deny the self and the world fades away. Refuse to question, the will becomes obsolete. In a world born from dead memory, the corpse of control is an anchor to the free. Options have been reduced to zero, leading us to believe we have no choices. This can only manifest if we fail to comprehend. There is always more. We must search. We must seek the truth. The nominal self is immortality. Once fractured over 1,000 lives, now is when we bring it all together. We barely know this nominal self because we are forced to deny its existence. We can come to know, however. But first, we must know what we are. We must know what the world is. We must know the unifying principle threading these into one. We no longer have the luxury of doubt. There is a world beyond the physical and mental that we can observe. If we do not come to learn the way to properly observe the truth of existence, the world as it actually is, we will never build up the nominal self. Instead, we will create only a weak, misguided caricature embedded in ego. But if we look deep enough in the mirror, can we not say this is already the case? Ideally, if you have returned to the series, you're probably one who hopes to build a stable foundation and the quest to have an enriching life. When we envelop ourselves in our imaginations, the tried and true thought that in this place anything is possible springs to life. While the thought itself is true enough, what happens when we try to redistribute our imaginations into the objective world? Through art, music, writing, or any number of creative endeavors, injection of our ideas into the outer world is possible. However, even the finest works of art are usually so filtered, so ground up, by the time they reach objectivity, they generally have no resemblance to their original form. For just a moment, we can set creativity aside and talk about objective possibilities. Subjectively speaking, creating situations in your inner life are not plagued by the same rigmarole that penetrating the objective world is. Of course, this thought simulation runs on a narrow view of the individual spectrum. For simplicity, we'll inject a holographic principle here and say what applies to large applies to small. The question remaining is, what is the go-between in reconciling thought and action? How can we unite the subjective to the objective, the large to the small, the above to the below? The only answer is choice. When we think about probabilities or the outcome of a given situation, we actually create a path. You can call it quantum tunneling if you want. Makes no difference. When we arrive at the crossroads in decision making, we can see laid out before us the multifarious directions we can take. It is imperative to plan our next maneuver without dilly-dally. When comes the moment of choosing, from the infinite number of ways we can direct our path, we narrow our focus on one particular decision. From this point, the nascent point, is born the new infinity of choices. Every moment we create new pathways to travel. Every moment we reverse engineer the former path to zero, turning at the nascent point to create the next step onward to infinity. This, our lives, is the road that does not end. All those who wish to refute free will, the ability to choose beyond this way or that thing, or the abyss in between, have a singular focus. This focus is directed toward laziness. They don't want to do or choose anything. Deniers of free will point the blame in not having a choice. That way they can continue on in their static haze, taking responsibility for nothing. This leads to a feeling of recurrence in one's life. The same things happen day in and day out. Instead of realizing they're to blame, they preach about boredom and how much life sucks. Let it be known, weak choices make for recurrence and weak lives. If a better life is desired, an individual such as yourself needs to make strong decisions. Think about people you know who are wishy-washy. Then just imagine asking them to make a decision, let alone a forward-thinking one. What is the outcome in this scenario? What is the result if someone comes to you at decision time? What course do you take? You possess the ability to choose whatever you want in life. Free will is yours to command. The very will unfree people deny is the very thing that creates the next steps in reality. If you lack imagination, then you lack the skill to create new possibilities. By choosing the same course day in and day out, you limit your very potential. In our commitment to truth and change, we owe it to ourselves to make empowered choices. So tell me, what path do you choose on the road to personal progression?
What was I just talking about? Oh, that's right. I haven't spoken a word about the decay of modern society in quite some time. Let's be straight on one thing, though. My desire is not to pontificate ad nauseum about such affairs. Surely there's more than enough talking heads online or otherwise who wish to stuff useless information down your throat on a whim. That's not why I'm in your feed, though. I'm here because our backward species needs to be put on a correcting course. We know that, though, don't we? At every turn, there's always a group or individual who want to inform us of what we are doing wrong. In contrast, who is offering up real solutions? Beyond that, who is implementing them? Taking this work even further, even when someone is invested in these steps, they quit down the road because there is no reward, leaving so much undone. Of course, there is no reward for caring. Why would that be a surprise to anyone? Modern society teaches us. When we start a task, we do so with a promise. Upon completion, we will be given something in return. Usually money, a paycheck, or some medal of achievement, a pat on the back with a thumbs up. Anything of that ilk, really. Ask yourself, as I have, how often are we asked to perform a task well, to the best of our ability, invest everything we can into all that we do, and not be compensated in some fashion? Let me clear up a few talking points from this dialogue. First off, I'm not saying individuals should work for free, that's ludicrous. Inversely, why are we seeing a glut of artists and creators who are creating simply to make a quick buck? For instance, most of the so-called writers today only write in hopes of their work becoming adapted into a movie, TV show, or a musical. They come with this attitude out of the gate, then wonder why they aren't rich and famous. Some artists are too proud to work at all. They've sold themselves on the idea. I'm creative, unique, my work is special, flowing from the teats of muses, blah fucking blah. So they shit something on a canvas or barf up a script and await their fame and glory. Truth is, seeking gain at the outset of creativity is nothing more than a distraction. Most everything in our world is a distraction. Memes, viral videos, fear campaigns, news media programs, talking heads, video games, phone apps, division, disconnection, rappers with beef, puppet President Cheetos, incessant finger pointing, groupthink, antiquated thought systems, morons trying to hoist up racism again. By this point in our history, racism, sexism, religious oppression, labelism, hatred for others who aren't the same, hatred for those who are the same, all of these should be a non-issue. Imagine a world where every single person hates every other person, hates everybody but themselves. This is the world the apathetic, backwards-thinking masses are building. Those of us who want to build a rational world become more and more embedded in this infected thought wasteland every time, every moment we are alive. We want no part in enabling morons to dictate the way the world should become. To combat this dying simulation, we must attain focus. An ultimate goal is to summon awareness when others wish to sleepwalk through their lives. If they wish to live in a nightmarish fantasy, let them have it. We don't need to change anyone's mind. to coerce them to a better way of thinking. We simply need to be the embodiment of focus and discipline. When the apathetic horde gets in a tizzy about what the faux president is doing, we take the initiative and say, it's time to focus. Why is the system trying to distract us? What is the reason behind this? It doesn't take long to come up with the answer. Every moment we submit to the demon of distraction, we lose precious time in building up our lives. The dialectic is here and now. Focus on what is important to the betterment of our world. Maintain discipline in the face of distraction. Have you been listening, or were you busy neglecting the truth? We no longer have the luxury of doubt to sustain our ways. The time has come to mature as a species. The time is now to take an active role in your existence. Others are well on their way. What about you? Focus or distraction? Let free will be the center of your choice.
In the course of our lives, we are made to not care about anything, because it's easier that way, isn't it? No responsibility wanted, no effort needed. From early childhood on, we are constantly reduced to an infantile mind state. Let's consider first the content we consume. From mostly bland, unoriginal TV shows containing sterile, unfunny commercials, their food, drink, electronics, cleaning, and other products into our minds. Let's observe the common thread looping through these. What I refer to here is the cartoon figure, the icon, the mascot, the varied anthropomorphized entities of the products we consume now come to life. Reflect for a moment on how little interest we would show in these products if they had drab, white backgrounds with Helvetica font set in the center merely stating what was inside. No one would simulate the slightest interest in such things. So right out of the gate, we have cartoon characters brandished across all platforms of advertising. Which brings us back to a simpler, submissive, more suggestive state of mind. Here we are then, vulnerable, more susceptible to mind infiltration, more agreeable to observing other infantile fools bicker and whine. All one needs to do is turn on the TV, radio, phone, any streaming device, take in reality shows, which are anything but. All of it is nothing but endless chatter and fighting. We are bombarded every moment by so-called pundits haggling back and forth as though they are children fighting over a broken toy. But it's not the toy that is broken, is it? What's broken is our perspective. We accept this lot, these childish games, because we have made ourselves weak. Some of us, anyway. Anyone that has taken the slightest of steps beyond average culture can see clear as day the tripe they try to sell us as veal. I want to take you aside for a moment to comment on so-called adulting. This is a term I distrust more than any. A self-respecting individual who actually behaves in an adult manner would never claim adulting as part of their day. That's the same as a teacher trotting around blaring at everyone's face that he is teaching instead of performing the act of teaching. It's goddamn ridiculous. Do they want some sort of medal for acting like an adult? Fuck that noise. As much as I could carry on about the problem, I feel it better to offer up some choices that could work their way into solutions. Approaching the front line choices is the ability to grow up. Quit wasting time, quit wasting energy, effort on pointless things, such as fighting all the time. Do we really want to be stuck here on Earth, known as the Alabama of the universe, endlessly yammering on about how right our point of view is? To always drag a conversation, public or otherwise, back to how offended we are when someone else offers up their opinion. I say opinion because that's what it always comes down to. Someone's childish opinion of their own subjective viewpoint. We need to grow up. And unless there is something worth fighting for, to end the fight, we need to release the old ways of thought. Any ancient or current system that has proved useless must be abolished. I'm not talking proven useless by statistics or data sheets. I mean, even when the simplest of people can recognize the flaws in a system, all the rusted gears and broken parts must be gutted and rebuilt better than before. In the same manner that an individual can be deemed infantile by their inaction and apathy, barring things that really don't matter to the collective whole, we can use this scale compared to the macrocosm of humanity as a whole. What is meant by this is humanity itself is stuck in an infantile stage, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. Now is the time to move forward. Now is the time for solutions. Now is the time to grow up. The choice is simple. Grow up and move forward, or stay shackled to the dead, crippling ways of the past. Only live blindly in the realm of shadows.
By now you've realized there's more to life than what's on the surface. My hope is that you as individuals have taken the reins of your life in hand and move forward on the path of freedom. While it is true that for some, it's easy to abandon this path and return to comfortable ways, that's not what we cultivate here. We want you to be the best that you can be. We want you to optimize every aspect of your life that you can. Remember, you're not alone. We are always here to lend a hand, guidance, because that's the way it should be. Individuals who look out for each other.